Hi, it's Laura at Aquamarine18. Thanks for stopping by my channel today. I'm here with a VR to a tag started by Brant, whose channel is Moonbaby. And Moonbaby is a new channel to me that I actually found by way of this tag. I saw a couple of my TerraTube friends do VRs to this tag, and I wanted to make one myself. So I'm looking forward to continuing to watch others' VRs as well, and wanted to hop on and participate. So Tarot Collector is the tag, and Tarot Collector has 9 prompts, and each of the prompts basically asks us to identify one deck from our collection that fits, the particular specification of the prompt. I will list all 9 of the prompts below, as well as Brant's original video creating this tag. So the first prompt is, what is your most expensive deck? And for this question, I went by what is the deck that I spent the most money on. So I know that there are a couple of decks in my collection that are out of print that I've seen listed and selling on eBay, for way more than this. But I just went by what I've paid the most for most expensive deck. And the most expensive deck in my collection that I paid the most for is the Buckland Romani Tarot by Raymond Buckland. And this is an out-of-print deck. I got it on eBay. It is a very personally special deck to me, and some of Raymond Buckland's work is really important to me as well. So I really wanted to have this deck in my collection in the interest of transparency, for the sake of the prompt asking about the most expensive deck. I paid about $105 for this, and that makes it the most expensive. This moon card with the 2 Vardos there is a favorite moon card for sure. And so I just love this deck. I feel like I got a good deal for it to be the most expensive deck in my collection. I've seen it go for more. And the copy that I got, of course, with it being a secondhand deck, being out of print, came in really, really good condition. And I got the guidebook as well, which the guidebook, in my opinion, is really excellent. So I'm really happy to have it. It's a very special deck to me, the Buckland Romani deck, which is the most expensive deck in my collection. The least expensive deck in my collection, for symmetry's sake, I went with the deck that I have paid the smallest amount of money for. So I did not include decks that I won in giveaways or anything like that I didn't actually pay anything for, or was gifted. I have a couple of those, but I included the deck that I have paid the smallest amount for, but that I did in fact buy. And the least expensive deck in my collection is the little tiny mini Visconti Tarot by Lo Scarabeo. I edged mine in black. So it's very small. It's also the smallest deck. It's the smallest deck that I have, I think, at least in its originary form. I have one very tiny trim deck, but this is the smallest. And it's actually in order because I got it really to just have a kind of reference to throw in my purse when I was reading the book Untold Tarot, which looks at the ancient, or very early tarot decks. So it is a kind of it's been there's been some redrawing in this one for sure. So it's not original, but I wanted to have, a deck like this to just be able to look at while I was reading that book. So I got this one, and it was maybe 10 Canadian dollars. So the Visconti Tarot is my least expensive deck in my collection, or the deck I've paid the least for. The third deck that I'll show, which is in response to the third prompt, there we go, third question, is the deck that other collectors would want to steal from your collection. I sincerely hope that nobody wants to steal from me. I certainly don't want to steal from anyone else, though I joked to Liz at West Star Tarot that when she showed the Delta Enduring Tarot for this prompt, I said, yeah, good choice, for sure. That's an out-of-print deck that I know is on other wish lists as well as mine. And then I watched also Julie from Peekaboo Rose do her VR to this one. And she actually picked the deck that kind of came to my mind first that maybe other collectors would want to steal from your collection, which is the Kickstarter version, the indie version of the Light Seers Tarot by Chris Ann. I backed the Kickstarter, so I have that deck. But for the sake of showing something different, very similar rationale, a deck that other collectors might want to steal from my collection, I have the indie version of Our Tarot by Sarah Shipman. This deck came out mass market very recently. And there's a couple of videos of the new mass market version on YouTube. Havana from Sparkle Divine Tarot has a very excellent, thorough comparison of the indie versus the mass market. Some of the cards feature completely different individuals. Some of the cards have the same person, but it's a different picture. And then a good number of them have the same artwork. But the mass market version, which has a guidebook that I'm quite interested in, I will say. The mass market version doesn't have the floral backs that this one has, which is something that I quite like about the deck. And the mass market version is also a mini size. It's not full tarot size, whereas this one is. So maybe a fan of Our Tarot would want to steal this one from my collection to have the bigger deck. That was what I thought of. Question number 4 is the Strangest deck. I don't really know about a Strangest deck, and I was like trying to think about whether the word strange has like negative connotations to it or something, like, oh, that's strange, like that's not a good thing. And I don't have any decks that I would describe as strange in that sense at all in my collection. But one that I think is unusual, that I think I don't see around very often, is the Manuscript of Initiations Tarot. And I got this deck actually in a trade with Lucy from Lucy Aqua de Luna on here on YouTube. And so we did a swap. I sent her an Oracle deck. And this deck I picked as strange just because it's based on different European and Middle Eastern ancient texts and manuscripts, which have then been kind of reworked. The imagery from those has been kind of reworked into a tarot deck. And the result is like not quite a pip deck, but not quite not a pip deck. It's definitely subject matter that I haven't really seen in any other deck besides this one. So I think it's very unique. I mean, whether that makes it strange to you or not, I'm not sure. But there are some pretty interesting depictions when you start to look through. So like this 5 of Wands card has people sitting on other people's shoulders and like having a little battle there at the top. That's a fairly unusual imagery choice, right? So I think that, there's something, perhaps slightly strange about the Manuscript of Initiations Tarot. I think it's quite well done. It has some nice gilding, and the one thing I'll say that I wish about this deck is that I wish that for each card the guidebook said which manuscripts that the imagery was from or that they brought together, just because I have a background doing archival research. I'm interested in that kind of thing. But yeah, it's a bit of a strange deck. It's a unique one. The Manuscript of Initiations Tarot. Prompt number 5 is the deck other collectors are least likely to have in their collection. So I'd actually thought of a different deck for this prompt at first, but then I realized that there's actually a very obvious tarot deck in my collection for this deck others are least likely to have. And that's the Ocean Dry Tarot by Colin Campbell. That others are least likely to have because it's a prototype. It's not available yet. I have no doubt that others will have it soon enough because it's a beautiful deck. This is the Ocean Dry card. Definitely get the Ocean Dry Tarot when it comes out, especially if you like a pip deck. It's beautiful. The colors are amazing. The system that Colin has come up with is interesting as well. It reads beautifully. I love this deck. I love this deck, and I'm really excited that other people, look at these majors, the colors are amazing. I'm really excited that other people are going to get to have this deck because I've really enjoyed working with it. I do enjoy working with it. That said, right now, I can definitely say that this is the deck in my collection that others are least likely to have in theirs because, I don't know the exact number of these decks that are out there in the world right now, but I know that very few people have it. So, the Ocean Dry Tarot. Your oldest deck or the deck you've had in the collection the longest is the next prompt. So I didn't pick the oldest, in the sense of like vintage decks or anything like that. I just picked the first deck that I got. And that is and I don't have the box anymore. It took some finding to figure out actually what this was. Is the Jonathan D. Tarot Pack, which I got 17 years ago, maybe 16 years ago. It's a mass market deck. The cardstock is horrifying. There's the backs. It's like laminated. It's like a laminated paper. I actually really like the artwork. This is a deck that was gifted to me by my family when I was, very early teen, preteen time. That I've, in the last couple years, just refound. I knew that it was there somewhere, but refound at the back of a closet in a bedroom that I once occupied in my parents' house. So that Jonathan D. Tarot Pack is the deck that I've had the longest. And I'm really glad to still have it. I can't say it's one that I read with super frequently, but I'm glad that I have my first deck. That feels really special to me. My newest deck, the deck that joined my collection most recently, I haven't made any video about this or anything like that, is the Majestic Earth Tarot by J.D. Hildegard Hinkle. And this is a deck, I don't know if I'll do a video of this deck or not, because I feel like there's lots of videos of this deck. It was one that I had missed out on. And if you watch my channel, you know that I like landscape artwork a lot. And it was one that was on my wish list. And then I found out through Casper Boy Diviner, that there was some factory seconds listed on the website. So decks that were discounted, either 10, 20, 30, 40% off, based on being kind of not quite perfect. And so they were the slightly discounted decks. And as soon as I heard that, and as soon as I was able, I went on and grabbed one. And I think that they actually may be all gone now. So I chose the 10% discount, which was the smallest discount. So, the ones that are maybe the least obviously damaged. And I don't think this is even going to show up on the camera, but the only issue with the copy that I got is that on the top corner here, the gilding is a little bit inconsistent. But this does not bother me at all. I'm really happy to have been able to add this deck to my collection. I didn't think I would necessarily get to. Secondhand out of print decks are sometimes quite expensive, but this deck is right up my alley as a lover of landscape decks. It's still in order because I just keep looking at these images, these paintings, just being in awe, and so I'm thrilled with this deck. I do have, in terms of newest decks, I do have a recent Kickstarter back. I backed the Gentle Tarot on Kickstarter, but obviously that is not to me yet. The campaign just closed really recently, and I was actually backer number 2 for the Gentle Tarot. I've never been that fast before. I was backer number 2. So the most recent deck that I have actually purchased is, in fact, this one, the Majestic Earth Tarot, and I love it. I'm thrilled to have it. Running out of space on the table. The deck that made you want to collect decks in the first place. This was the hardest prompt. Good question. And Brandcraft talked about this in the original video, the deck that started it all, right? The deck that made you want to collect tarot decks. And for a long time, I only had had this one. the Jonathan D. Tarot pack. And back then, like 2003 or 4, I was not aware that there was like tons of different decks out there. I was just, gifted the one by my family because I was interested in it, and they supported that. And it wasn't on my radar that there was anything like the number of decks out there that there are now. Well, there weren't really then, but the idea of collecting decks like is not one that I've been familiar with for very long. We'll say that. So actually, it's not a very old deck. That is the deck that I would say made me want to collect decks in the first place. So I had that one deck for a long time. And then I had, I got the yellow box Smith-Waite, right? Because I wanted to learn about the Smith-Waite system. But the deck that I saw that was like, oh. And when I saw it, I didn't know how to read it. I didn't know what the heck I would do with it, to be honest. But that I saw and I was like, oh, this is why people have multiple decks. I bet people have multiple decks, and they have multiple decks because of things like this. And that was the Prismavisions by James R. Eads, who's one of my favorite deck creators who I have quite a few decks from now, and have one on the way from a Kickstarter that I repeatedly increased my pledge on. I know I'm not the only one who did that. But the Prismavisions, and I have I know there's a new one either out or coming out that's got the more matte cardstock that his Lenormand does, but I have the glossy cardstock. I don't even care. But when I saw this deck, it was like, I was so taken by this artwork. And, the brilliance of it and the panoramas that the deck has and just everything about it. I wasn't at a stage necessarily in my tarot reading that I felt like confident about having a deck like this. But it just opened up a world for me years ago. Like, I've only been collecting tarot, I guess, for 4 years, maybe. Like, I obviously had decks way longer than that, but to say that I was truly collecting tarot, maybe 4 years. And this deck, if I had to pinpoint one, this deck was the deck that opened up the world of indie decks for me, which, I will say is kind of like saying, the deck that made me want to collect decks. And number 9, your favorite deck from your collection. I am notoriously bad. I'm notoriously bad at favorite, whenever there's a prompt of like your top 5 decks, I end up with like 13 or something. It's like, oh, there's lots of ties, it's fine. I didn't cheat or anything. But there is only one deck in my collection. Actually, that's a lie. Maybe there's 2. The other one being Buckland, that I have, either said was or thought of as my soul deck. So I guess that is the one that is the favorite from my collection. And that is, people will know if you know my channel, the Naturescapes Tarot by Tina. And I love the Naturescapes Tarot. This is another one that sometimes I just sit and look at, but I love reading with this deck. This deck has, so I've talked about it, but it's, it's supported me in ways that I really needed, and I haven't had it for that long. Just, I got it this year, but since, having this deck, I feel like I've read with fewer decks this year because I pick up this one so frequently. I love it. I loved it when I saw it. I knew I would love it. And from, the moment of having it, it has gone right to the top of my list, the Naturescapes Tarot. So that is the Tarot Collector tag. I hope to see other folks sharing the decks in their collections in response to these prompts. Always interesting. to see, a handful of decks that kind of maybe represent, at least in particular respects, the breadth of someone's deck collection. So I've enjoyed the ones I've watched so far and look forward to more. Thank you, Moonbaby, for starting this tag, and look forward to more videos and, of course, chatting with you all in the comments. Thanks for watching and have a great day. Bye.